I keep coming back to this singular, inescapable fact. I am alive. Given the odds, those 3 words are more miraculous than you might imagine. He had a lot of friends, but he was incredibly lonely. He hid childhood traumas and self-doubt behind bright jokes. He did not want to be remembered only as Chandler Bing, and he saw his mission in helping those who had lost their way in life.
Look, Jimmy, I may hate my life, but I certainly don't want to die.
Today on the Biographer channel, we will tell the story of Matthew Perry, a comedian with a tragic fate whose life was cut short so suddenly. What made 14-year-old Matthew start drinking alcohol? What did he pray for 3 weeks before starting work on the most famous TV series in the world? What connects Perry and his famous character, Chandler Bing? Which woman did Perry regret breaking up with the most? We will talk about this as well about his friends, lovers, and a big terrible thing in today's video. It will be both fun and sad, but you will definitely not remain indifferent. Sit back and we'll start. Matthew Langford Perry was born on August 19, 1969 to John Bennett Perry and Suzanne Marie Langford. Perry's parents met in 1967 at the annual Miss Canadian University Snow Queen beauty pageant in Ontario. Suzanne was the guest of honor there because she had won this title the year before, and John performed as part of the musical group Serendipity at a concert dedicated to this event. 2 young and attractive people that evening didn't take their eyes off each other, and their acquaintance later turned into passionate love. The couple moved to Perry's hometown, Williamstown, Massachusetts, and 2 years later, they had a son. The baby was very restless. He was very worried with colic, and after a month of continuous crying of the baby, the exhausted parents turned to a pediatrician for help. He prescribed a powerful sedative to a 1-month-old child. Few people thought about the side effect of these medicines, especially on the tender child's psyche then. This medicine coped with the scream on all 100. The child just fell asleep with a funny expression on his face, sometimes making funny sounds, and young parents could at least rest for a while. Perhaps it was these strong sedatives that later led to tolerance to banned substances, and as a result, Perry's eternal struggle with addiction. In addition, these medications greatly affected his sleep.
I know that it affected my sleep forever. I don't really sleep that well, and I'm pretty sure it's because of that. But if I was a parent and it was 1970...
However, the family life of John and Suzanne did not work out, and pretty quickly they decided to separate. Matthew was 9 months old at the time. One day, the parents got into the car and drove 5.5 hours to the Canadian border near Niagara Falls. Warren Langford was already waiting for his daughter and grandson. It was there that the young couple put the final point in their relationship. I'm told my father took me out of my car seat, handed me into my grandfather's arms, and with that, he quietly abandoned me and my mother. John went to California to realize his dream of becoming an actor, and little Maddie was left with a young 21-year-old mother who struggled to raise her son on her own. When 3-year-old Perry was in kindergarten, one of the children playing knocked the door hard on his fingers. The boy was taken to the hospital, and his mother hurried there, who immediately got a call at work. Maddie actually lost the tip of his middle finger that day, but fearing that his tears would bring pain and suffering to his loved one, he did not cry, but instead calmed his mother with the words, "You don't need to cry. I didn't cry." Even then, Perry became a performer and people pleaser. The 3-year-old boy realized that now he's the man in the house and his mother's peace is his mission. With Dad gone, I quickly understood that I had a role to play at home. My job was to entertain, to cajole, to delight, to make others laugh, to soothe, to please, to be the fool to the entire court. However, despite his heroic behavior in the hospital, Maddie was embarrassed by the absence of a part of his finger for 6 long years, considering himself somehow inferior. One day, everything stopped when he, a 9-year-old boy, was brought into the cockpit on an airplane, which used to be normal practice. The pilot noticed that Maddie was hiding his hand in his pocket and asked to see it. When he, burning with shame, did this, his interlocutor showed his hand with the same flaw. Realizing that this man who controls the whole plane does not have a complex about the missing fingertip, Perry got rid of his complex once and for all. By the way, fans of Friends remember that in one of the episodes, it turned out that Chandler Bing also lacks part of a finger, however, on his foot.
That's why I lost my toe? Because I called you fat?
I didn't mean to cut it off. It was an accident.
That's why for an entire year people called me Sir Limps-a-Lot?
Later, you'll see that Matthew actually has a lot in common with this character, and it's no coincidence at all, but more on that later. Until now, little Perry lived his childhood life and tried to attract his mother's attention at any cost. She, at that time, was the press secretary of the Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau and spent a lot of time at work. When she came home after a hard day's work, Matty had to listen to her mother before telling her about his day. Even then, he stayed at home alone for a long time because Suzanne was on the road all the time and therefore constantly felt lonely. I would tell people I was a lonely child, having misheard the phrase, only child. After his father left the family, Perry was very afraid that one day his mother would not come home from work either. He tried his best to win her attention. He did it best when he was joking. "My mother is beautiful. She was a star in every room she entered," the actor said, "and she's certainly the reason I'm funny." Chandler and his mother also had a difficult relationship. She was a beautiful, successful author. The eyes of fans and men were constantly on her, and Chandler also wanted her to just pay attention to him, be a normal mom at least a little bit, and give him a piece of her love.
I'm sorry, honey. I promise it will never happen again. Are we okay now?
Yeah. No.
Matty automatically saw every man his mother met as his father because the boy lacked a strong shoulder, a man from whom he could take an example. And every time Suzanne's suitors, one by one, disappeared from his life, it was a small tragedy for Perry. When a plane went over our house, I'd ask my grandmother, "Is that Michael, Bill, John, insert name of mom's latest boo, flying away?" The actor later recalled, "I was continuously losing my father. I was continually being dropped at the border." His real father, John, called Matty every Sunday. After giving up his music career, he tried himself in films, first in New York and then in Hollywood. Being a very handsome man, he became the official face of the Old Spice brand. "I saw his face more often on TV or in magazines than I did in reality," Perry later recalled. "Perhaps that's why I became an actor." For Matty, his father was a real superhero, handsome and brave, and he really wanted to be like him. Later, the boy began to fly to Los Angeles to visit John and spend time with him. A vivid memory of this period was the case when his mother sent him, a 5-year-old, alone to his father by plane. The boy was terrified. His feet didn't even reach the floor. There was no one to comfort him, so all Matthew had to calm down was a magazine. "And then when I saw the lights of the city, I knew we were landing, that my dad was going to pick me up and I'd have a parent again," he recalled. "That's why views of the ocean or city lights have always given me a feeling of safety." Since then, he has always chosen a house with a panoramic view. For each birthday, the future actor made only one wish, that his parents would be together again. Matty constantly felt unhappy and could not yet find a cure for his loneliness. By the way, in another popular TV series, Scrubs, there's an episode in which Perry and his father also played the roles of father and son, with the surname Marks. Their relationship was very vividly shown there, where the younger Murray wanted to give his kidney to the older Gregory. The father, in whom the whole hospital fell in love, took all the attention and shared his positivity with everyone except his sarcastic son, who had been waiting for simple love from him all his life. Apparently, it was easy for both actors to understand the actions of their characters, but was it easy for them to play, in fact, themselves? Who knows?
Before you say anything, I just want you to know, if you need a kidney, you can have mine.
See?
For $70,000.
Meanwhile, Matty was getting used to his new life. Suzanne, who moved frequently because of her job while her son was living in Ottawa, left the nannies, finally took her son to Toronto. By that time, she was married to the host of the program Canada AM, Keith Morrison, and was due to give birth. Perry's sister, Caitlin, was a beautiful girl, and her older brother loved her immensely. However, he felt more and more like an outsider in this happy family. He understood that he did not fit into this perfect picture with all his problems and complexes. That's when his bad behavior began. Matty received low grades, started smoking, and once even beat Pierre Trudeau's son, the same Justin Trudeau who became prime minister in the future. He was only 10 at the time. "I decided to end my argument with him when he was put in charge of an entire army," the actor joked. When Perry was in 7th grade, his family moved back to live in Ottawa. He attended Ashbury College Boys' School, by the way, a boys' school, and hello again, Chandler Bing, and honed his humor there. Once he got one of the main roles in the school play, The Death and Life of Sneaky Fitch. It was a big part, and I just loved it. Making people laugh felt like everything, the star later recalled. Since then, he's participated in all school productions. However, this did not stop him from doing bad things. Matthew stole money, smoked more, and got worse grades. And one day, the teachers turned his desk in such a way that the guy could not see anything except the wall, because he talked a lot and spent all his time trying to make his classmates laugh. One of the teachers, Dr. Webb, once told Perry, "If you don't change the way you are, you'll never amount to anything." When he became mega popular and got on the cover of People magazine, he sent a copy to this teacher with an attached note with the words, "I guess you were wrong." Although young Perry's behavior left much to be desired, his athletic achievements softened the attitudes of the teachers a little. The fact was that Matty played tennis. My grandfather started teaching me how to play tennis when I was 4, and by the time I was 8, I knew I could beat him, but I waited until I was 10. He trained 8 to 10 hours a day and dreamed of Wimbledon and a professional career in the sport. Perry wanted to have a lot of awards, hold the coveted cup in his hands, thinking that in this way he would definitely attract his mother's attention to himself. By 14, I was nationally ranked in Canada, the actor recalled, but that was also the year something else started. Drinkers think they are trying to escape, but really they are trying to overcome a mental disorder they didn't know they had. At the age of 14, Matty tried alcohol for the first time. Even before that, he believed that this bitter liquid could make his world better and brighter, and most importantly, muffle the inner pain and loneliness that ate him from the inside. And how couldn't he think so, if films and TV show of that time showed smiling people with a glass of alcohol in their hand? Then he was friends with 2 brothers, Chris and Brian Murray. Since the 3rd grade, this trio has invented its own specific way of speaking, like, "Could it be any hotter?" This style of conversation of Chandler will become canonical for fans of Friends later.
Okay, I don't sound like that. That is so not true. Oh, shut up!
Therefore, friends were sitting in Matt's yard one day, his parents were not at home, and the guys decided to try alcohol for the first time. There was a bottle of wine and 6 bottles of beer at home. The brothers took the beer and Perry took the wine. After 15 minutes, everyone was drunk. Chris and Brian turned the contents of their stomachs out on the grass, and Matty lay and looked at the sky. He finally found what he had been looking for all these years: inner peace. It was then that he realized that he was not like everyone else. He had no side effects from the effects of alcohol. Of course, in the beginning. Then everything went to hell. In the meantime, he was in a state of bliss. During these 3 hours, he had no problems. He was not abandoned. He did not quarrel with his mother. He did not study badly at school. He was not interested in what life was and his place in it. Alcohol took all these thoughts out of Matty's head.
I drank the entire bottle and lay in the ground and looked at the skies and just felt better than I ever had in my entire life. And I thought to myself, this is probably what normal people feel like all the time.
Oddly enough, after such an experience, Matty did not start drinking right away, but the beginning of a harmful habit, for him, was made. With growing up, interests in girls also came. However, one unpleasant experience almost ruined the young man's future life. One day, a girl he liked offered to take the relationship to another level. Matty was so nervous that he had drank 6 glasses of beer before, and therefore, he did not succeed. Disappointed and angry at himself, the guy diagnosed himself as impotent, and this belief found a place in his already sick mind, where the fear of loneliness, the desire to please, anger, and despair lived side by side. Meanwhile, his family was growing. Perry had another sister, Emily, whom he also loved immensely. However, the relationship with his mother was getting worse every day. They often quarreled, and tennis was the only place where he felt good, even though he was constantly nervous and crying there, even when he won. After all, the game almost always started against him, and by the end of the set, he was already so tired that he was crying from exhaustion and despair. Besides, he missed his father very much, and the decision came by itself. He was going to live in Los Angeles to be near his dad. Susanna and John, after talking, decided that a change of environment could be useful for their 15-year-old son, as well as for his future tennis career. They were seriously considering sending Matty to Nick Bollettieri's tennis academy in Florida. Later, it would turn out that his level of play, which was considered very promising in Canada, was mediocre in the United States, which shattered Matthew's dream of cups and Wimbledon. But Perry didn't know that yet. He just wanted to change the scenery, and the move was not delayed. John had already married by that time, and his daughter Maria was growing up. The new wife and father warmly welcomed the guy and encouraged his love of tennis. The whole family went to support Matty at his first and last match in his life. It was a satellite tournament where the guy didn't get a single point. That's how Matthew Perry's sports career ended, without really starting. He had to come up with another plan and choose another future profession. At that time, Perry began studying at a prestigious private school and pretty quickly got a role in Thornton Wilder's school play, Our Town. The guy was delighted and began to think about following in his father's footsteps. When John found out about it, he, without unnecessary speeches, gave his son the book Acting with Style. There was the inscription inside it, "Another generation shot to hell. Love, Dad." In the evenings, the elder Perry liked to drink in the presence of his son, pouring himself vodka and tonic and saying one phrase each time. "This is the best thing that happened to me all day." It is not surprising that Matty, as an adult, also fell in love with this drink. But there was still a difference between father and son in this bad habit. After 6 glasses in the evening, in the morning the elder Perry was cheerful and went to work as if nothing had happened. Matty, on the contrary, found it difficult to get out of bed and function normally if alcohol got into his body the day before. But then he did not even realize what terrible consequences his addiction would lead to. Later, his father would completely give up alcohol, just stop drinking one day. For Matthew, this decision will turn into a long battle for sobriety. I've spent upward of $7 million trying to get sober. I have been to 6,000 AA meetings. I've been to rehab 15 times. I've been in a mental institution, gone to therapy twice a week for 30 years, been to death's door. However, while he was a simple teenager with a bunch of cockroaches in his head who was just starting to lose his way, he saw his salvation from loneliness in becoming a famous star. Inspired by the life of a rather famous father, Perry began to audition. In 1983, he appeared in the comedy series Not Necessarily the News, and 2 years later, he received a cameo role in the first season of the sitcom Charles in Charge. There, he played the role of Ed, a wealthy guy who had just one phrase: "My father's a Princeton man and a surgeon. I'd like to follow in his footsteps." In 1987 and 1988, he played one of the main roles, Chaz Russell, in the TV series Second Chance, later called Boys Will Be Boys.
Boys will be boys?
What? They will be!
He went to the audition with his father because they needed actors for the role of father and son. But after the auditions, only Matthew was invited to the show and John stayed away. He did not dissuade his son from participating in the project, although he has not been in the studio with Matty since, and appeared on the set only during the filming of the final episode as a support group. As for Perry, he was 17. He already had his own show and was getting $5,000 a week. It was a lot of money for a teenager. The young man, without hesitation, dropped out of school and enjoyed the life of an actor. He became more confident in himself, and his humor attracted a lot of girls to an already cute guy. One day, when the actor was sitting in a cafe and joking with his friends, a man walked past their table and put a note in front of Perry, inviting him to come to the audition of his new film. This man turned out to be director William Richard, who at that time was trying to film his novel, A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. Matthew successfully auditioned for the role of the main character's friend, the cute and slightly arrogant Fred Roberts, who suffered from chronic chastity. This topic turned out to be close to Perry because after an early traumatic experience, he was afraid of intimacy with girls. The main role in the film was played by River Phoenix, who became a close friend of Matty. The actor, however, died 5 years later from an overdose, which was a big shock for Perry. Filming took place in Chicago, and the 17-year-old actor was left without parental supervision for the first time. He and River often drank after work, played billiards, and met girls. At the same time, he met a girl named Trisha Fisher, with whom he later began dating. By that time, Matthew turned to 18 and he wanted intimacy and was sure that nothing would work out for him, so he assured his beloved that he just wanted to wait until he was 100% sure. Trisha began to suspect that something was wrong and quickly found out what the problem was. Matthew told the girl about the first unsuccessful attempt at intimacy, and this, oddly enough, did not alienate his beloved. On the contrary, it became a kind of challenge for her. However, at first, nothing worked out for them either. Perry's psychological trauma haunted him. Nothing worked, and Matthew pulled away from the girl. I sat there, he continued his story, soft and sad, my 2 hands cupped over my lap like a nun's during Vespers, doing my best to cover my embarrassment and maybe a tear or two. But Trisha understood his fears and helped him cope with self-doubt. Since then, he has never had any problems sexually. As for Trisha, Perry soon ended his relationship with her, but they got back together when Friends were at the peak of popularity. And although nothing good came out of their relationship, Fisher will forever remain the first female star. Although shooting scenes with Perry in the picture A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon lasted only 3 weeks, the guy was allowed to stay until the end of filming. Those were wonderful, fun, and carefree days. However, after returning to Los Angeles, Matty again plunged headlong into reality. School grades have not improved. Hundreds of auditions have led to nowhere. He was taken into episodic comedy roles, but the desired success never came. At his graduation from school, his only desire was to see Dad and Mom together again. And this wish came true. It was then that Matthew realized how right his parents' decision was to separate, because during the family dinner after graduation at the table, they felt very uncomfortable and were strangers to each other. By the way, it will be decades before Suzanne and John are in the same room again, but it will be for a completely different reason. In the meantime, Perry led a wild life, hung out with his friends, and drank a lot. According to Malcolm Gladwell, if you did anything for 10,000 hours, you could be an expert. This made me an expert in 2 areas, 1980s tennis and drinking. Only one of those subjects is important enough to save a life. I'll let you guess which one. In 1990, Matthew got a role in one of the episodes of the first season of the popular 90s youth TV series Beverly Hills 90210. There he played the role of Roger Azarian, a Beverly Hills tennis star and the son of a businessman. Apparently, Perry had such a type, a kind of major with emotional baggage, because his early roles were quite similar to each other.
No, Dylan, how about we see what these clunkers are made of?
No thanks, I already know what mine can do.
Suit yourself.
By that time, the actor was not yet 22 years old. He constantly had some kind of work, but the roles were not serious, episodic, and success and fame were in no hurry to knock on his door. In the same year, Perry starred in another sitcom called Sydney, this time in the role of the brother of the main character played by Valerie Bertinelli. After the first season, the project was closed, and Matthew had no special memories of it, except for 2. Firstly, on the set, he met Craig Bierko, who became one of his best friends. Their company also included David Pressman and Hank Azaria, known to many for the voice acting of The Simpsons, as well as for the role of the scientist whom Phoebe loved. Another memorable moment from the Sydney show was his unrequited love for his on-screen sister, Valerie. Matthew's always been attracted to inaccessible women, and Bertinelli was just like that because she was already married to musician Eddie Van Halen. It was difficult for Perry to hide his feelings for a colleague, and therefore the work on the sitcom became more and more unbearable. One evening, Matthew stayed late at the Van Halen's house. They were drinking, and then Eddie fell asleep in the living room. There was alcohol or hidden feelings. However, Valerie and Maddie started kissing pretty quickly. And this was in the room where Eddie slept. The next day, the actress pretended that nothing had happened, and although everything was not going well in their family, she did not continue the affair with her colleague, which had not had time to begin. A year later, the couple still divorced, but Perry has already moved on. A frivolous life, lack of financial skills, and an abundance of alcohol played a cruel joke with the financial situation of the young actor. Money was running out, and it was getting harder to find a new job. Until fate gave Matthew a chance. Having no means of support, Perry called all his agents back and begged them to find him at least some project. The work was not long in coming. It was a sci-fi comedy about baggage handlers at Los Angeles Airport called LAX 2194. Matthew was paid $22.5 thousand for the pilot series, and this was enough to lead a comfortable existence for now. However, at the same time, another script of a news show called Friends Like Us fell into his hands. After reading it, Perry realized that he had made a huge mistake. The fact is that a contract was signed with the creators of LAX 2194 did not allow the actor to participate in new projects, but in one of the characters of the second sitcom, he recognized himself. When I read the script for Friends Like Us, it was as if someone had followed me around for a year, stealing my jokes, copying my mannerisms, photocopying my world-weary yet witty view of life. One character in particular stood out to me. It wasn't that I thought I could play Chandler. I was Chandler. To make matters worse, everyone he knew also started auditioning for the role of Chandler and also asking Matthew for advice on how to best play him, because he looked so much like Perry. His friend Hank Azaria also auditioned, twice. However, he did it for the role of Joey. However, he was refused. Later, Hank played a scientist who was totally in love with Phoebe and even won an Emmy for these few episodes. "I did 237 episodes and won nothing," Perry quipped. Matthew practiced reading of the lines so often with other actors whom he helped prepare for the auditions that he soon knew all the words by heart, and every 3 to 4 days he called the agents and begged them to come up with something to circumvent the terms of the contract with another show and still audition for Friends Like Us. From the first pages of the script, he felt that this sitcom would be very successful. The dialogues were funny, the characters were bright, and everyone could see themselves in these 6 friends from New York with the usual problems and daily worries. Perry just had to be one of those lucky ones, one of the friends. But one day his friend Craig Bierko said that he was offered to participate in 2 projects, Best Friends and the already famous Friends Like Us, where he auditioned for the role of who? What do you think? Of course, it was the role of Chandler. By that time, the rest of the actors had already been chosen, but they could not find Mr. Bing. Perry advised Bierko to still try to get into the cast of Friends, although he himself wanted this role with all his heart. Craig did not listen to this advice and agreed to the main role in another project, Best Friends. So Chandler's role was still not taken. It was a sign of fate. Perry had another chance and he wasn't going to lose it. By the way, later Bierko was very sorry that he did not try himself in Friends and could not even talk to Perry for several years because he missed such an opportunity and Matthew took advantage of it. Later, they renewed their friendship. That phone call at Fred Segal's and Craig's desire to be the star of his own show rather than be part of an ensemble saved my life. I don't know what would have happened to me had the call gone the other way. It is not out of the realms of possibility that I may have ended up on the streets of downtown. But let's go back to 1994. The NBC producer Jamie Tarses, once in a conversation with her then-husband Dan McDermott, a Fox TV producer, asked him if the show LAX 2194 would be successful and received a negative answer. She then asked Dan if Matthew Perry could audition for the role of Chandler Bing, whom they were still looking for, and this time received an affirmative answer. So the young 24-year-old actor had a chance to prove to everyone that he not only can play the role of Chandler, he is Chandler himself. He came to the audition without a script, which surprised one of the creators of the show, Marta Kaufman, and recited his lines by heart. He successfully passed this audition, as well as the other 2, and finally, the 6th member of the team, the unsurpassed Mr. Chandler Bing, appeared in the show, which everyone later recognized as Friends.
Chandler gets it! It's Chandler Bing! No!
I'm afraid the TV guide comes to Chandler Bong.
3 weeks before the audition, Perry was sitting in his small apartment and reading an article about Charlie Sheen. The actor said that the famous actor got into another scrape, but Matthew did not understand why Charlie should worry about this because he was a world-famous actor. Out of the blue, the actor got down on his knees and began to pray. "God, you can do whatever you want to me. Just please make me famous." God granted Matthew's wish. He made him famous, and he also fulfilled the first part of the deal. After all, everything comes with a cost. Be afraid of your desires. They may come true. Now, all these years later, I'm certain that I got famous so I would not waste my entire life trying to get famous. You have to get famous to know that it's not the answer, and nobody who is not famous will ever truly believe that. So what is the secret of Matthew's success, and the most famous sitcom of all time in particular? We'll tell you about this later. In the meantime, you are nostalgic with us for Friends and Chandler Bing. You can subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so as not to miss new videos about the most famous stars. We have a lot of interesting things ahead. Are you ready? Then let's continue. In recent years, I've come to understand just what Friends means to people, and we knew from the very start that it was something very, very special. When the cast was approved, they all gathered for the first time to get acquainted. For Perry, all the actors, except Jennifer Aniston, were new people in his life. But Matthew met Aniston 3 years before Friends, and even then immediately fell in love with her. Once he even asked her out on a date, but she refused, offering to be friends instead. Is it the irony of fate? Perhaps. After all, for some 3 years, they really will have to play friends. Best friends. And Perry will have to hide his feelings again. Yeah, he's no stranger to it.
Let me just say something, because once we get into this, I'm gonna get all uncomfortable and probably make some stupid joke. I just want to say that I love you.
Director Jimmy Burrows understood that for the real chemistry of 6 friends in the shot, it was necessary for the actors to make friends in real life. Therefore, instead of the usual reading of the script at a round table, he took them to the playground in Monica's apartment and gave them the opportunity to get to know each other better and communicate. They talked about everything. The time and the friendly atmosphere passed so quickly, and the conversation was so relaxed that everyone really felt that a real friendship was being born here. After that, they went to lunch, and at the table, Courtney Cox, who was supposed to play Monica Geller, said, "There are no stars here. This is an ensemble show. We're all supposed to be friends." And everyone listened to her. From that first day, the actors became inseparable. They ate together and played poker. And although each was assigned a separate dressing room, they had never been there. They were more comfortable and more fun together. Perry always tried to make everyone laugh because he always used humor to please. Wasn't that what Chandler always did?
I'm Chandler. I make jokes when I'm uncomfortable.
At the end of the first day, for the first time in many years, he felt truly happy and could not wait to be among people again tomorrow who became his true friends for many years. The next day, the entire cast was waiting for a reading in front of hundreds of people who were involved in the project, including screenwriters, film crew, and others. And then there was the rehearsal at Monica's apartment. Everything went great. Everyone began to realize the show would most likely become a hit, bring its creators a lot of money, and the actors get a long-awaited recognition. In the meantime, the work process was in full swing. Episodes were being filmed. The friendship was getting stronger. Everyone was allowed to be creative. Everyone, without exception. Unsuccessful jokes were replaced with more successful ones, and the creators of the show even invited each of the cast to lunch to ask them about their personal lives and add a part of the actor himself to each character so that everything looked even more plausible on the screen. Perry later said, "At my lunch I said 2 things. One, that even though I considered myself not unattractive, I had terrible luck with women and that my relationships tended toward the disastrous. And 2, that I was not comfortable in any silence at all. I have to break any such moment with a joke." This was the reason to make Chandler the funniest among friends and a loser in a romantic relationship.
Hold on, don't go. I've scared you. I've said too much. I'm hopeless and awkward and desperate for love.
The actors got so carried away with their characters that during the entire period of filming of the first season, they almost did not make bloopers. Everything was going as well as possible, and by the summer of 1994, the first season was ready for production. However, no one knew about the show yet, and the actors were not recognized on the streets yet. They had a whole summer before the start of the series on TV. Matthew remembered this summer with 3 events. The first one was a trip with the cast to Vegas where they had fun for the last time, like unknown people to anyone else. The second one was a trip to Mexico where Perry rested, drank a lot, and picked up girls. And the third one was a little affair with the still little-known actress Gwyneth Paltrow. The couple met at the Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts. Both were there most of the summer putting on plays. At the mention of Gwyneth herself, the actors went swimming in streams, drank beer at the local student bar, and kissed in the field. They remained friends for a while until their paths parted, but both have fond memories of this summer romance. Friends, which was the name they decided to give the series, was broadcast on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. between 2 very popular shows, Mad About You and Seinfeld. It was a very good choice, which later also affected the ratings of the Friends themselves. The premiere of the sitcom took place on September 22nd, 1994, and the show took the 17th place, which was good for a new project. Basically, critics liked the series, but there were several negative reviews. Despite this, after a dozen episodes, Friends entered the top 10 and then the top 5 series, and since then has not gone below the 5th line. And in 1995, Friends won the People's Choice Awards in the category Favorite New Television Comedy Series for the magnificent first season. Matthew shared his experience about the ceremony.
It was exciting and really scary for me though, because I don't have a tuxedo, so I had to rent the tuxedo, and I called in and gave my measurements and all that stuff. And I didn't really think about it until about an hour before the actual show, and I put on the tuxedo that had been sent to me, and I was wearing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's pants.
Oh no, really?
Freakishly different size pants. And I have to be like on stage in half an hour, so I was like, I was thinking staples. I had no idea what to do, and I finally found this one guy who worked at this small like dry cleaners. I believe his name was Cheech, who agreed to fix this. So about a half an hour before I was on stage, the People's Choice Awards, I'm in like a tuxedo and my underwear, while this guy's going, like fixing it really.
It was after the successful first season that David Schwimmer, who received more fees under contracts than others, because before Friends he had a lot of experience in cinema, somehow came to the cast with an offer. He decided to renegotiate the terms of his agreement so that all 6 actors would receive the same amount for each episode, regardless of how much time each of them was involved in it. Such a noble act influenced the future fate of the project because now there was no place for envy and injustice in it, which meant that 6 friends had nothing to share. Perhaps this is where the success and worldwide recognition of this beloved show lies. Who knows? And while we continue, write in the comments, what's your favorite episode from Friends? As for Perry, he was over the moon. He was 25. Glory finally knocked on his door. He had everything he had dreamed of for so long. But did it bring him happiness? Once the actor shared his thoughts on this in an interview with The Guardian. I've been on the least watched show in the history of television, Second Chance in 1987. And the most watched, Friends, and none of it really did what I thought it was going to do to my life. After the frenzied success of the first season of Friends, it was decided to immediately start shooting the second one. On the episode, the one after the Super Bowl, it was decided to invite big stars such as Jean-Claude Van Damme, Brooke Shields, Chris Isaac, and Julia Roberts. Marta Kaufman told Perry that Julia would agree to take part in the show only on condition that she would be in Chandler's story. But first, the actress had to be attracted by something, and this honorable mission fell on Perry's shoulders. He decided to send the star 3 dozen roses with a postcard that read, "The only thing more exciting than the prospect of you doing the show is that I finally have an excuse to send you flowers." To this, Roberts replied that she would take part in the show if Matthew explained quantum physics to her in simple words. The very next day, he sent her what she asked for by fax. Yes, people communicated in this way, among other things, in the era without social networks. The communications did not end there. Julia sent more and more questions each time, which Maddie was helped to answer by everyone who was involved in Friends. Everyone was rooting for him and believed that the heart of the wayward Roberts would soon melt. Finally, she sent him bagels. That's how their long-distance relationship began. They lasted more than 3 months. They exchanged dozens, hundreds of messages a day, writing about everything in the world. Perry fell head over heels for her, and they didn't even talk once, even on the phone. And they didn't see each other either. Finally, one day, a fax came to Maddie with one phrase, "Call me," and a phone number. Overcoming his fear, the man dialed Julia's phone number and to his surprise found how easy it was for them to communicate. They talked for 5.5 hours, and so the relationship on the phone began. However, it was short-lived. After all, very soon, Roberts appeared on the doorstep of the actor's apartment and everything started spinning very quickly.
Oh, shoot, we gotta go. Got a reservation in 30 minutes.
Oh, no. You see, what I had planned shouldn't take more than 2-3 minutes tops.
200 seconds of passion. We gotta go.
They became a couple even before they starred in that famous episode of Friends. Perry met his girlfriend's family, and the couple celebrated the new year in the mountains of Mexico, playing football in the snow. However, what started quickly ended quickly too, and Perry soon began to realize that it was necessary to break up with Julia. His old complexes affected him. Dating Julia Roberts had been too much for me, the actor recalled. I had been constantly certain that she was going to break up with me. Why would she not? I was not enough. I could never be enough. I was broken, bent, unlovable. So Maddie didn't find anything better than ending the relationship first. Later, he regretted this choice very much and always followed the success of the star that he once lost forever. After the second season of Friends was filmed, Perry got his first starring role in the comedy drama Fools Rush In with Salma Hayek. For this work, he received a fee of $1 million for the first time. Filming took place in Vegas. The biggest difficulty was that the scenes were not shot in turn, and already on the second day, it was necessary to squeeze out some emotions looking at the sonogram of his unborn child. But Maddie had only known Salma for a few days then, and it was hard for him to get these emotions. Hayek once just came to Perry in his van and offered to spoon a little bit to somehow feel each other. However, this did not help much either. In another scene, when Perry's character needed to cry, he was just thinking about something sad. But there was one thing. The shooting lasted 10 hours, and the director kept demanding tears. When the actor, exhausted from all emotions, approached him to ask him to finish the shooting, he asked him to cry twice more. This upset Matthew so much that he actually started crying, and the scene was finally filmed. And during the love confession of the two heroes, Salma advised Perry to look as if through her, as if seeing their future together. Then the actor replied in his usual manner, "Listen, Salma, I'm telling you I love you in this scene. You look wherever you want, but I'm going to be looking at you." In general, jokes were Perry's feature. He was gushing with ideas on how to make this or that scene funnier, to which the director of the picture, Andy Tennant, told him, "You don't have to do that. You're interesting enough to watch without doing that." Something like, "Maddie, you're enough." The actor wanted to hear this all his life. However, Andy still listened to some of Perry's ideas. Once, one of the actor's friends came up with the phrase, "You are everything I never knew that I always wanted." Matthew offered it to the director and he allowed him to add it to the film. The actor later admitted that it was the best movie phrase he had ever said, and besides, it became the most famous phrase in the picture.
I mean, I was actually worried that I'd already met the woman of my dreams at the dry cleaners or something, and I was too busy to notice. But then you show up, and I realize that that's not true. Because you're the one. You are everything I never knew I always wanted.
However, not everything was so rosy during the filming of Fools Rush In. One day, Perry was offered to go to Lake Mead to ride jet skis. An unpleasant incident occurred while riding. "I turned the jet ski hard right, but my body went straight on," the star recalled. "I was airborne, and then I was not airborne. Once I surfaced, I looked back to where I'd started, and there stood 40 people on the shoreline, the entire crew who had been watching me risk the entire movie, and who now all dove into Lake Mead to get me." It turned out that the actor was badly hurt and injured his neck. A doctor was called, and he gave Perry a painkiller pill. He got on his character's Mustang and drove to the mountain where he took that pill alone. He felt so good that he even thought, "If this doesn't kill me, I'm doing this again." If Maddie had known then how that pill would turn out, maybe he wouldn't have taken it. However, he didn't think about it then, but he just called the doctor and said that the medicine helped with the pain, and the next morning he already had 40 of them prescribed to him. Unfortunately, nothing ended on these 40. After a year and a half, Perry swallowed 55 pieces a day, weighed 128 pounds, and ended up in a drug rehabilitation center where he was on the verge of life and death. This will be repeated 14 more times. Banned substances will alternate with alcohol, and the fight against these addictions will last his whole life. At the end of the third season of Friends, it was noticeable how Perry had lost weight. "You can track the trajectory of my addiction if you gauge my weight from season to season. When I'm carrying weight, it's alcohol. When I'm skinny, it's pills. When I have a goatee, it's lots of pills." He had no appetite at all because of his addiction. Now the only thought every day was where he could get more painkillers. His dose by that time had already reached 55 tablets, and if he did not take them, he was very ill. Perry did everything possible to get medicines. He called doctors with fake migraines, looked for pills in the cabinets of his friends' bathrooms, went into houses for sale during their viewing in search of at least something similar, and contacted dealers.
And I guess the weirdest thing I did was on Sundays, I would go to open houses and go to the bathrooms in the open house and see what pills they had in there and steal them. And I think they thought, well, there's no way that Chandler came in and stole from us.
After the success of the first film, Perry immediately took up another project. This time, the comedy Almost Heroes with Chris Farley. This time, the actor has already been paid $2 million. Filming took place in North Carolina. Both performers of the main roles struggled with addiction, so the film was barely finished. Perry was sick all the time. He was still losing weight from malnutrition and a lot of pills. Chris Farley never lived to see the premiere, and Maddie had to promote the film himself and talk about his colleague's addiction while under substances. No one guessed what was going on with him, neither family, nor friends, nor acquaintances. "I didn't know how to stop," he will say. "The disease and the addiction is progressive, so it gets worse and worse as you grow older." One day he became so ill that he told his doctor about everything, and he sent him to a rehabilitation center in Minnesota. Detoxification was difficult. The actor had a seizure, but he recovered, improved his health a little, gained weight, and got rid of dependence on painkillers. The fourth season of Friends was his best because the actor felt much better and looked great, but the actor was not fully conscious for a long time. Already 68 days after being discharged from the rehabilitation center, Perry started drinking again, and since then he drank daily until 2001. In parallel with season 4, he starred in the romantic comedy 3 to Tango and fell in love with his colleague on the set, Neve Campbell. And as usual with Perry, again with an inaccessible woman. She chose another one, and the glass helped him to forget and survive his loneliness. When I can get someone, I have to leave them before they leave me because I'm not good enough, and I'm about to be found out. But when someone I want doesn't choose me, that just proves I'm not enough, and I've been found out. The picture 3 to Tango failed with a bang at the box office, collecting a little more than $10 million, with the budget being twice as much. Critics didn't like it either, mostly because of stupid jokes and cliches. Matty was 30 years old when he was taken to the hospital with a diagnosis of pancreatitis. The reason was excessive alcohol consumption. His girlfriend at the time, Jamie Tarsis, the one who advised Perry at one time for the role of Chandler, spent all her days with him in the hospital. The actor was prescribed another powerful medication to reduce pain. Of course, no one knew about his addiction, so Matty quickly got hooked on these pills, and it all started anew. Dealers, constant dose search. And all this despite the fact that Matty temporarily moved from the hospital to live with his father. There, he did not stop using, and once he almost had an accident crashing his car into the stairs in front of his father's house, driving around a car parked on the road. Of course, the photo with the star near the battered car got into People magazine. Perry moved out from his father, but he can't run away from himself. One day, during the filming of the 5th season of Friends, Jennifer Aniston came into Matty's dressing room and admitted that they knew he was drinking. It was a shock for Perry. He carefully concealed everything.
Secrets kill you. Secrets kill people like me.
However, the actor did not want to admit that he was addicted, neither to himself nor to his friends. He promised not to drink and replaced some pills with others that would help reduce the dose. In the pause between the 5th and 6th seasons, the actor was offered to star in the crime comedy The Whole 9 Yards with Bruce Willis, and he gladly agreed. Filming took place in Montreal. The cast was good, and director Kevin Pollak allowed to improvise and share creative ideas. All that was needed from Perry's character was to be afraid of Willis and to be in love with Natasha Henstridge. The actor coped with both missions perfectly well.
Oz was supposed to be my first.
Excuse me?
His wife hired me.
What I tell
That was you?
I was supposed to make it look like an accident, so I went to work for him so I could, familiarize myself with his habits.
Good.
Get to know him.
Smart.
Thanks. But then after I got to know him, I started to like him.
First mistake.
I know!
Willis rented an entire penthouse of the Intercontinental Hotel for himself and hosted parties that lasted all night, and the actors and crew sometimes went straight from there to the set. Perry started using a powerful sedative so that the body could take a break from such a crazy schedule, even knowing that a tranquilizer can react negatively to alcohol. One weekend, Bruce took Perry and his then-girlfriend, waitress Renee, to his estate where they rested for 3 whole days, not hiding from the paparazzi. Bruce rented all the nearby houses so that no one would interfere with their rest. Despite all this, the workflow went pretty fast, and very soon the picture was released. The Whole 9 Yards became the #1 movie in America for 3 weeks in a row. Critics mostly praised the performance of both actors of the main roles, and the film earned $106 million to its creators. Interestingly, Bruce himself did not believe in the success of the film, and then he and Perry made a bet. If the picture is successful, then Willis should star in 3 episodes of Friends for free. So it turned out, and Bruce appeared in the 6th season, and even received an Emmy Award for his role. 4 years after this success, a sequel appeared on big screens. If The Whole 9 Yards was the start of my movie stardom, it's fair to say that The Whole 10 Yards was the end. The film was shot in Los Angeles. The actors had too much freedom, and the script was largely inferior to the first part. The picture failed at the box office, and the rating on Rotten Tomatoes was only 4%. The paths of the 2 friends who had been walking and drinking together quite often before diverged. Matthew returned to the Friends set, and the addiction did not disappear anywhere, but, in fact, it was getting worse every day. Colleagues and the crew worried about the actor's condition and even hired a person who would monitor his sobriety. But when once again everything went down the drain, Matthew just ran away to shoot the romantic comedy Serving Sara. As a result, due to his unsatisfactory condition, the actor had to interrupt filming, pay a fine of $650,000, and go to another rehabilitation center. This time, it was in Los Angeles. The film, by the way, was released already in 2002 and failed miserably at the box office. It barely collected $20 million with a budget of $29 million. However, back to Matty. A month of detoxification did little to help him, and the star was transferred to another center in Malibu, where he had another 3-month course of treatment.
Yeah, I mean, detox is hell. There is a hell. I know it. It has tangible features. I can describe it.
There, he came across a book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and only at that moment he began to understand his addiction and its causes. And for the first time, he seriously thought about his lifestyle and how his actions affected his family and friends. "I was living in rehab when Monica and Chandler got married. It was May 17th, 2001. The actor later recalled. In the same center, he also watched the Academy Awards ceremony where the golden statuette was received by the one and only Julia Roberts, the one he missed and the breakup with which he regretted the most. Of course, Perry did not live by thoughts of Roberts alone, and his romantic life was very active. The girls were replaced one after another, but none could captivate his heart. At one time, he was seen in public with actress Yasmin Bleeth, and Chandler was so in love with her at the time. Producers of the series Veep, Gabrielle Allen, former tennis player Maeve Quinlan, and actress Heather Graham. But all these were fleeting romances that did not even last a few months, and the star never commented on them. And let's go back to the rehabilitation center. After 3 months, Perry was cured of alcoholism and substance addiction, broke off his relationship with his girlfriend Jamie Tarsis, and was ready to start working again. The last season of Friends was very emotional for the entire crew. However, the actors were already beginning to get tired of their screen images, which were so loved by viewers all over the world. Jennifer Aniston was the first who persuaded the producers to shorten the last season because she already had future projects in a big movie. During the last episode, where all the keys were put on the counter and the characters said goodbye to their usual life, it was Perry who said the last phrase. He asked Marta Kaufman about it, as it was very important to him. However, when the shooting ended, the entire cast started crying. Everyone except Matthew. "I felt nothing," the actor said, and he didn't know if it was because he was on pills or because he was just generally dead inside.
No, look, I don't cry. It's not a big deal, okay?
No, it's not okay. It's not okay at all. You're dead inside.
Despite the end of a huge milestone in his life, Perry, meanwhile, looked forward to the future with hope. He was just about to release a sequel movie to The Whole 10 Yards, and he also starred in 2 episodes of the drama series Ally McBeal, and 3 episodes of The West Wing, for which he was already twice nominated for an Emmy Award. And in 2006, the drama The Ron Clark Story was released on TV. It was about a real teacher from a small town who got a job at one of the most problematic schools in Harlem. There wasn't a single joke in the whole thing. It drove me crazy how serious it was. So off camera, I created a character called Ron Dark who was drunk and who constantly swore in front of the children. The film became a real hit and brought Perry nominations for the SAG Award, Golden Globe, and Emmy. He lost all 3 to Robert Duvall. Back during the filming of the Ron Clark Story, the script Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip fell into Matthew's hands. He liked it, but only $50,000 were offered for the series, while for the last season of Friends, the actor received more than $1 million per episode. And Matt LeBlanc for his spin-off Joey had $600,000 per episode. Long negotiations began, which raised Perry's salary to $175,000 per episode. In addition, the creators of the series gave Amanda Peet one of the roles. She was a good friend of Matthew, who starred with him in The Whole 9 Yards and The Whole 10 Yards.
I need to know how big a problem it's going to be.
It's not going to be a problem at all.
It will if you're in love with her.
I'm not. I'm not.
Despite the good script, the atmosphere on the set was different from the one that was in Friends. The author of the show, Aaron Sorkin, did not allow improvising and did everything in his own way. Maddie's ideas were also ignored. When the pilot episode aired, critics were mostly positive about the project. However, as the actor later recalled, it was trying to be a serious show about comedy and quality TV, as though those 2 things were as important as world politics. After the first season, due to poor ratings, the series was closed, and Matthew was out of work again. Changes were also planned in Perry's personal life. The relationship with Lizzie Kaplan, with whom the actor had been dating since 2006, began to grow into something serious. At Christmas, 4 years after they met, Perry made a gift to his beloved, a picture where they were depicted together. She was with a copy of the New York Times and bottled water, and he was holding a Red Bull and reading Sports Illustrated. And all the while, they were writing to each other. The artist added 1,780 hearts, one for each message that the couple exchanged. And all these little hearts were combined into one huge heart. Lizzie took this gift very well, and Maddie even wanted to confess to her that day, but the essence of Chandler Bing came out, and his sarcastic comment spoiled the whole festive mood. The couple dated for 6 long years and then broke up, never getting married. Perry said that it was after the day when he almost asked her to marry him that the relationship began to wane. "I often think if I'd asked her to marry me, now we'd have 2 kids and a house," he wrote in his book. "Instead, I'm some schmuck who's alone in his house at 53. In addition to building a relationship with Lizzie, Matthew did not stop his acting career. In 2007, he starred in the romantic comedy Numb, where he played the role of a screenwriter with clinical depression who was tried to help by a new acquaintance. The picture received mediocre reviews from critics. The following year, Perry appeared in another comedy drama, Birds of America, about the difficult relationship between brothers and sisters. The actor was credited with a small affair with Lauren Graham, who played the wife of Matthew's character in the film, which he did not comment on in any way. In 2009, Perry starred in the teen fantasy comedy 17 Again, where he played an older version of Mike O'Donnell who was given a chance to become a teenager again and realize his dreams. The younger version of Mike was played by Zac Efron. Despite mediocre reviews from critics, the movie became a hit at the box office. They criticized mainly casting directors who gave two completely different physically and emotionally people the role of the same person. Well, it happens.
You're the best decision I ever made. I just forgot. And then I fell off a bridge, and things got pretty weird after that. But I'm never going to forget again.
Struggling with addictions and solving problems in relationships, Perry in 2011 created his own sitcom called Mr. Sunshine. He put a piece of himself into the main character, Ben Donovan. In the story, Ben ran the Sunshine Center, the second sports arena in San Diego, California. This quirky but short-lived comedy told about the daily events of strange people working at an unusual job. Matthew called the positive aspect of this experience that he learned how to make a television show from scratch. However, the audience was interested in his project for exactly 2 weeks. Then the ratings began to fall inexorably, and after 11 episodes, the show was canceled. The following year, he played in another series called Go On about a sports radio commentator who was trying to survive the death of his wife. And again, there was a successful start and cancellation after the first season. And once again, there were unsatisfactory ratings. Between these two projects, Perry ended up in rehab again. However, these visits to the center supported his crazy life and restored his health to the level of normal functioning only temporarily until he again went off the right path. Back in 2001, in one of the centers, he met a man named Earl, who later became a sponsor of the actor. Together with Earl, he went through all the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. When Earl founded a company with sober living houses around Los Angeles, Perry invested $500,000 in the company and turned his house in Malibu into the same sobriety house called Perry House.
For some reason, it's obviously because I was on Friends, more people will listen to me. So I've got to take advantage of that. I've got to help as many people as I can.
Matthew and Earl traveled to Washington, D.C. several times to meet with lawmakers to improve the effectiveness of the courts on banned substances. Such courts seek to decriminalize nonviolent dependents by offering them care and treatment instead of imprisonment. And in May 2013, Perry even received the Champion of Recovery Award from the Obama administration's Office of National Drug Control Policy. It was decided to tell about these and other issues on The Piers Morgan Show, where Perry became the host for one episode and his guest was Lisa Kudrow, who did not stop laughing at the jokes of her friend and former colleague on the set.
About a month ago, I got a call from Jeff Zucker asking me to guest host for Piers Morgan Live, and I had two questions for him. The first was, how the hell did you get my number, Jeff? And the second, of course, was, who's Piers Morgan? Seriously.
Earl was supposed to be there instead of Lisa, but at the last moment he couldn't get on the show. But he and Perry flew to Europe to raise the issue of special courts for dependent people there, but they didn't succeed. The sobriety house in Malibu also did not bring the desired dividends, so Maddie had to sell it. Earl never gave him back the $500,000 invested in the business, and in return fled to Arizona. Out of desperation, having lost a sum of money and also a friend, the actor began using again.
Your disease is just outside, just doing one-arm push-ups, just waiting for you, waiting to get you alone. Because alone, you lose to the disease.
After the failure of the show Go On, Matthew fell into depression. He was using again, becoming more and more disillusioned with life. He needed a breath of fresh air. This was the sitcom The Odd Couple, about two friends who, after unsuccessful marriages, decided to live together. Matthew's partner on the set was Thomas Lennon. The source material was brilliant. The cast was great. Everything anticipated the upcoming hit. However, depression haunted the star, and his addiction did not allow him to work normally. He was late all the time, he was under the influence of substances, and in the end, he didn't solve anything in his own show. However, this time it was not closed after the first season, and the sitcom lasted 3. Perry began to write in order to somehow deal with the accumulated anger at himself and the whole world. The play, The End of Longing, was written in 10 days, but the actor needed another year to perfect it. The play's action took place in a bar in downtown Los Angeles and focused on 4 people over the age of 40 who were looking for the meaning of life. Perry played the main role of Jack, a man with an addiction to alcohol. He repeatedly stated that this role was sort of an exaggerated form of himself, while noting that this is not an autobiography. The play received mixed reviews from critics who wrote that the play was non-format and rather resembled a miniseries. Short scenes, smart lines, characters trying to make sense of their relationships, Jesse Green in New York noted. Far from a bingectomy, The End of Longing, which opened on Monday in a slick MCC theater production, amounts to a relapse. The part Mr. Perry has written for himself is a Chandler gone to seed, a round-the-clock drunk named Jack who is eking his way through his late 40s on sarcasm and a last filament of charm. However, many praised Perry for his attempts at writing. Performing on stage in his hometown for his ex-girlfriend, Lizzie Kaplan, Matthew invited her to the play and she refused, citing a very busy schedule. Later in an email, she explained that she was getting married and she no longer had time for friends. The actor did not respond to this letter, and they have not communicated since. It was an incredibly harsh way to reveal the news that she was getting married, Matthew said, and not something that I would ever do to a person, but there you have it. Even still, I will forever be planted in her corner. In 2007, Matthew returned to TV screens again, taking part in the drama series The Good Fight and playing the role of Ted Kennedy in the miniseries The Kennedys After Camelot. The producers of the project were very worried about presenting him with dignity given the role the Kennedy family played in American society. However, Perry was not confused by the iconic name of his character. And one of the main reasons to take up the show, he called the desire to play a role that would surpass his previous work. I didn't feel pressure taking on the role. I just looked at it as an opportunity to do something different than I've ever done. I wanted to make sure that I didn't do a Ted Kennedy impression, but brought some of myself to the role, the actor said. And already in July 2019, he found himself in a hospital bed again. He underwent a 7-hour emergency operation after tearing his colon, a rare but potential result of the abuse of potent painkillers. That day, doctors told his family that he had only a 2% chance of surviving at night. After the incident, he spent 5 months in the hospital, including 2 weeks in a coma.
But I wanted to start it because that's the time I really came close to my life ending. I was put on a thing called an ECMO machine, which does all the breathing for your heart and your lungs. And that's called a Hail Mary. Every doctor says it's a Hail Mary. Like, no one survives that. And there were 5 people put on an ECMO machine that night, and the other 4 died. And I survived. So the big question is, why? Why was I the one that survived? There has to be some kind of reason. And for those suffering out there, there is a reason. You know, the worst that can happen to somebody just gives you more tools to help somebody else.
During his life, Perry underwent 14 stomach surgeries. That's a lot of reminders to stay sober, Perry told People magazine about his surgical scars in October 2022. All I have to do is look down. When Perry had thoughts of taking pills again, he reminded himself of what his therapist said. If he thinks about using illegal substances again, let him think about the colostomy bag for the rest of his life. In addition to his parents, after the operation, Matty was supported at that time by his girlfriend, literary manager Molly Hurwitz, with whom the actor began dating in 2018. The couple did not advertise their relationship for a long time, and a year later, Perry proposed to her and the couple was engaged for 6 months. Yes, there was the same trouble again. It never came to the wedding. Sometimes things just don't work out, and this is one of them, Perry's rep later said in an official statement. In the midst of quarantine due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Perry had another near-death experience while in a rehabilitation center in Switzerland. He had to undergo surgery, and during the procedure, he was injected with propofol. After 11 hours, he woke up in another hospital and was told that the medication had stopped his heart 5 times. The long process of cardiopulmonary resuscitation led to the fracture of 8 ribs. After such serious health and personal life problems, it's not surprising that in May 2021, during the broadcast of a special episode of Friends, many viewers did not recognize in the elderly, tired man that Matthew Perry, whom they loved so much. Years of struggling with a big, terrible thing were taking their toll. During this meeting, the actor also confessed to his colleagues and friends what psychological difficulties he faced during the filming of each of the episodes of the series.
At least to me, I felt like I was gonna die if they didn't laugh. And it's not healthy, for sure. But I would sometimes say a line and they wouldn't laugh, and I would sweat and just like go into convulsions. If I didn't get the laugh I was supposed to get, I would freak out.
It would take you down.
Yeah.
You didn't tell us that. Would it
No?
hurt? No, I don't remember you ever saying that.
Oh yeah, I felt like that every single night.
And his fans learned more about the secrets of the star's life the following year when his autobiographical book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, was published. There, Perry takes the reader behind the scenes of the popular sitcom and his struggle with addiction. Sincere, conscious, and written with Maddie's characteristic humor, the book vividly recounts his lifelong struggle with the disease and what caused it. In a 2022 interview with People, Perry revealed that he wrote his memoir for everyone struggling with addiction. I say in the book that if I did die, it would shock people, but it wouldn't surprise anybody. And that's what I'm doing with writing this book. That's why I wanted to do it, the star said. I wanted to talk about the highs and the lows because people are suffering out there, and maybe if they hear a story from somebody they've seen on TV that's worse than theirs or just the same as theirs, they'll be filled with hope, which is the key thing. During the release of his memoirs, the actor posted several videos on his Instagram account in which he shared his own life experience. Perry stressed that people with addiction should understand that they are not alone. Their behavior is a disease, and it can be defeated. There's a famous lie that people don't change. I happen to know that people do change, and I see that every day, he argued. I see people getting better. I see the light in their eyes coming on. They get through the terrible part of addiction, the detox, and they're able to live a normal life as long as they do a certain amount of work every day. The actor didn't want to be remembered only as Chandler Bing. It was important for him to remain in the memory of people as a person who helped others. I'd like to be remembered as somebody who lived well, loved well, was a seeker, Perry said in an interview.
I want people to understand that they're not alone, that there are other people feeling exactly the way they're feeling, that their behavior is not insane, that they have a disease, and it's not their fault.
Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing is an unforgettable memoir that tells about the most intimate details of Perry's lost love, his darkest days, and his best friends. Critics were delighted with the book, and fans were shocked by how honest and open the story of their idol turned out to be. "I'm this close to dying every day," was written in one of the sections. If only he had known then how close he was to the truth. Before moving on to the last, saddest chapter in our story today, we remind you that you can subscribe to our channel in order not to miss new videos, sometimes tragic and sometimes life-affirming about your favorite stars of the film industry. And we continue. On October 28, 2023, the world was shocked by news. The Friends actor was found dead in a hot tub at his home in Los Angeles, California. Initial reports claimed that no prohibited substances were found at the scene and there were no violent acts that could have led to the death of the star. However, the investigation into the death of Matthew Perry is still ongoing. Investigators are still waiting for full toxicology results after the autopsy. On November 1st, 2023, law enforcement agencies did a superficial test which found that there were no common prohibited substances in Perry's body. This confirmed the words of the actor, who said that he was clean from 2021 in an interview with the New York Times in 2022. However, it will take months to conduct more detailed tests to find out if there were other illegal substances in his blood and if there was no overdose of any regular prescription medications. On the day of his death, nothing predicted a tragedy. Perry spent the morning playing pickleball and returned home after a 2-hour session on the court. It's reported that when he returned home, he sent his assistant with an assignment. He returned 2 hours later, and it was he who found the actor unconscious and called 911. For everyone, the news of the sudden death of their favorite actor was shocking. Parents and friends of the star find it difficult to recover from such a loss. The actor's family published a statement to People magazine the day after the tragedy, which reads, "We are heartbroken by the tragic loss of our beloved son and brother. Matthew brought so much joy to the world both as an actor and a friend. You all meant so much to him, and we appreciate the tremendous outpouring of love." Perry's co-stars on Friends also later broke the silence. "We are also utterly devastated by the loss of Matthew. We were more than just castmates. We are a family," their statement read. There's so much to say, but right now we're going to take a moment to grieve and process this unfathomable loss. In time, we will say more as and when we are able, the statement went on. For now, our thoughts and our love are with Maddie's family, his friends, and everyone who loved him around the world. While the cause of Matthew Perry's death remains unconfirmed, many fans of the star can't help but wonder if his sudden death was related to his past health problems, including his battle with addiction. The star's recent strange posts about Batman and social networks caused many of his fans to wonder if he had asked for help because of them. The sudden death of a beloved celebrity struggling with addiction has left many questions unresolved. This lack of answers only prompted conspiracy theorists to connect elusive threads around the most pressing question: how did Matthew Perry die? Conspiracy lovers dive deep and carefully select every clue they can find. The reason for this curiosity was one of the videos that Matthew published a few days before his death. He put 3 berries on the table with the inscription, "This is what I've had to eat today. I'm Mattman." In several Instagram posts, he playfully compared himself to the fictional DC hero Batman. Combining the actor's name and Batman seemed innocent until one of the conspiracy theorists stated otherwise in a shocking post X. According to him, the berries in the star's video were not cranberries, as you might think, but baneberry. Baneberry is a type of poisonous berry whose consumption can be fatal. A fan hinted that Perry was shouting for help in his post. Other users, on the contrary, saw cranberries in these berries and decided to remember that the soloist of the group Cranberries, Dolores O'Riordan, once drowned in her bath. Whatever it was, friends and acquaintances who communicated with the star a day or two before the tragic events deny any manifestations of depression in the actor. One of the journalists of Entertainment Tonight who interviewed Perry just the day before his death told,
"He was doing extremely, extremely well. He was happy as a clam, so that's the person that I spoke to. He was, I think, so optimistic and happy about everything that he wanted to do."
The journalist also shared Matthew's plans for the future. He was involved in many projects and also wanted to make his own biopic, and Zac Efron, who already played his younger version in the film 17 Again, was invited to play the main role in the film. An argument against the version according to which he decided to kill himself was also an interview that was made a year before the actor's death. There, Matthew said that he understood the health effects of psychotropic substances but never planned to pass away on his own. "I never tried, but I did so many drugs at certain times that I knew that it could kill me," Perry explained. "But I would do it, but I never wanted to die." As you can see, the actor's plans for the future unfortunately did not come true. Matthew Perry's relatives gathered for the funeral of the actor on November 3rd, 2023. The service was held at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles near Warner Bros. Studio, as a source told People, adding that it was attended by Perry's colleagues from Friends, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc, and David Schwimmer. Before his untimely death, the beloved Friends star, who struggled with alcohol and drug addiction for decades, planned to start a foundation to support those suffering from substance abuse. His loved ones brought this matter to an end, and on the day of his funeral, the Matthew Perry Foundation website was launched. The Matthew Perry Foundation is the realization of Matthew's enduring commitment to helping others struggling with the disease of addiction, the organization said in a statement. It will honor his legacy and be guided by his own words and experiences, and driven by his passion for making a difference in as many lives as possible.
The best thing about me, bar none, is if somebody comes up to me and says, "I can't stop drinking, can you help me?" I can say yes and follow up and do it. That's the best thing. And I've said this for a long time. When I die, I don't want Friends to be the first thing that's mentioned. I want that to be the first thing that's mentioned. And I'm going to live the rest of my life proving that.
Well, Matthew Perry's dream of helping people with addictions will continue, even after his death. We'll remember him not only as the funniest Chandler Bing, but also as a man who struggled with his big, terrible thing all his life and wanted to support people like him. And that's all for today. If you want to find out how the fate of other actors in the cast of Friends turned out, you can watch the video that appeared on your screen. We will be grateful for your like. It was the Biographer channel. See you in the next video.